Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a brand new YouTube video. Today we're going to be drawing Pippin, the Border Collie, and she's a really lovely, she's got so much character in her face. She's quite elderly in this photo, so there's going to be some grey hairs that we're going to get into, and yeah, we're just going to take it step by step. So with this first step, I've just transferred my digital outline that I created using trace down paper, and that first bit I was doing, I was just rubbing out some of the lines and making it a bit more faded so that it doesn't show through. I'm now going in with some loose graphite. I've just got it in a little jar there, and I'm using a cotton bud from Boots. It's got like a larger end to it, and I'm just kind of mapping out the shadows where I want some of the main areas of darker tone to be going, and this really does just helps to kind of sort out our brain and let us know where we're going to be going with the darker tones, so we're not just starting with a plain white intimidating background basically. This is a step I've kind of added in quite recently. I find it helps if you're newer to graphite than just going straight in with the details, which is what I usually do. And then I just took a kneaded eraser and kind of took away some of the loose graphite on the paper to make some nice white looking hairs around the white patch on her head. So now starting on the ear, and we're using the triangle technique that I've spoken about in my previous videos. So it's a mixture between the triangle technique and the tapered stroke. The triangle technique is just where we start the two hair strands from one point and then splay them outwards into like a kind of triangular shape again. And the tapered stroke is just where we have most of our pressure in the middle of the stroke rather than at the beginning or the end, and that can give us a really nice natural looking hair stroke. So you can see me here using those little triangles. It just kind of makes it look like there's partings in the fur, and it gives a really nice natural mottled tone effect because some of the hairs are going to be staying white. So it looks like there's kind of lighter hairs sitting on top of the darker hairs, and that's a really nice effect. Being really careful with the outside strokes here, the strokes that are kind of entering onto the white paper in the background. We really want to make them look like they're tapered at the ends, so if we're just doing straight lines, it's not going to look very natural. Another thing to note when we're doing these kind of hairs that are coming onto the background, like at the sides of the face, is don't make them look too kind of uniform. I think the human brain really wants us to kind of do strokes the same again and again and make like a nice looking pattern. I think that's it makes us feel safe as humans. So something to note is just to make your strokes all different, going off in different edges, different directions, different types of curves, and you can see that on the edges of this portrait. Just helps to make it look more natural and less kind of uniform. Pippin was at the beach in this photo, so all of her furs are kind of going off in different directions anyway, and I find it adds quite a lot of character to this portrait. For the really dark zones there, I'm just using a 4B pencil. But for the most part, I'm using my 2B mechanical pencil, the Faber Castell, and it's got a 2B lead in there. It's a really great pencil for details. As you can see, I'm using it mostly in this portrait. I know I've said it a few times now, but that was the pencil I literally just used on its own for the longest time. I didn't use any of the other pencils or any blending tools. So if you are just looking for a one-trick kind of pencil, then that is for you, because you can use all sorts of different leads in there as well. So moving on to the eye now, and I'm just getting down the darkest tones first of all that I can see, so the top of the eyes and around the eyes, and also around the pupil area, and the pupil, and then around the outside of the iris as well. There's a darker kind of ring around the eye. So then we just used a jelly roll pen, a white jelly roll pen. It's like a gel pen in the size 0.8 to pick out some of those slight white hairs there around the eye. What I do is I use the pen, but because the pen is like it gives you quite a thick line, I then go around the outside edges of those lines with a mechanical pencil and really taper the ends out and make it look like more of a natural fur stroke rather than just a massive white jelly pen line like how you see here. So you can see there I put them down, and now I'm going around the outside edges with the pencil just to really thin them out and make them look less kind of in your face. So I'm working with the directional lines here, just getting down all the shadows I can see, especially around the mouth area underneath the muzzle. On my Patreon video, I've got by the way, I've got a 3-hour version of this video on my Patreon. a lot of it's very slowed down and you can really see what I'm doing step by step, and I've also got the line art and the reference photo in that video as well that you can download and use for yourself so you can really follow along. But in the Patreon video I could not remember the word muzzle. I kept saying snozzle, so I was trying to mix nose with muzzle and snout, so it came out as snozzle. But I think it might stick, you know. So we're on the other ear now, and we're just really paying attention to the directional lines, making it look really nice and fluffy, going with the natural curvature of our hand. So I talk about this a lot in my Patreon videos. So you place your hand in an area, and you're kind of using your wrist as like a compass. You know, in school we use the compasses, so it's attached to a midpoint, and then it makes a nice circle because it goes around that midpoint. So I'm just using the kind of bend in my wrist to give a really nice natural flip of the hair strokes. And that's just going to give you more of a natural curve rather than like a really uniform kind of curve, like we're trying to do it. So I'm just moving around my paper and just positioning my hand in a way that's going to make that stroke really nice and natural looking, rather than trying to go against the grain and kind of go against what a hand actually wants to do. Every so often I'm using a paintbrush to kind of brush off any debris that might be sticking around on your paper that you don't want, especially if you're using the rubber pencils and you're rubbing things out. You really don't want any of those rubbings to kind of stay on the paper, because as soon as you go over that with the pencil, it's going to kind of push it into the paper and make a really dark, horrible look. So just keep on top of rubbing stuff out with your paintbrush. I'm now going on to the second eye. I've just left the main highlight white there. I'm just going around it, and I'm using the 2B mechanical pencil quite a lot here. And also, one of my favourite tools for doing eyes and the blending within the eye is the Silicone tool, which you can see me using sporadically there. It gives you a really nice smooth blend on top of the surface, whereas things like paper stumps will blend the graphite into the surface and kind of give you that texture kind of look. The Silicone tools will blend it on top of the surface and give you a really nice smooth look, which I think it looks great for eyes because it's that kind of glass-like effect. Also use the jelly roll pen within that eye there just to add some little highlights, and then I'm being sure to go over the top of those highlights so that they're not just sitting on the surface. Sometimes I'll go over it with the blending stump just to knock it back a tone and make it not look so bright, while still keeping that lifted tone where we've put the pen down. So for my darkest areas, I don't really go darker than a 4B pencil, because I find this is a happy medium between having that the hair stroke still visible and getting the dark tone down as well. Sometimes if I want a really black area, I'll use like an 8B, but that's quite rare. You might have noticed in this portrait I'm not using any black pencils. Sometimes I'll use black pencils or black pan pastels. But for this one I decided to keep it nice and simple and just stick with the graphite and the blending tools. For the white fur on the head, I've kind of just gone over it with a dirty cotton bud, where I've used it to blend other areas to give a nice kind of mid-tone shadow, and then I've gone over it with the rubber pencils, the Faber Castell Perfection eraser pencils, which you can sharpen to a really fine point. And I've kind of just taken hairs out from that dirty paper, so it looks like there's white hairs kind of overlapping it. This area around the muzzle here is one I really love, because you can really go to town with the triangle techniques, especially coming out from that nose section, because those hairs are kind of coming out and parting and entering into a more voluminous kind of surface, so they're kind of parting outwards into a triangle shape. So I find that that's a really good area to demonstrate that. Onto the nose now. We're just getting down our main tones where we can see the darkness first. I find it's quite handy to really study the structure of the nose before you start drawing it, and the first thing we want to do is get down where the main tones of shadow are, so that there's a nice base layer to work on, so we've got the structure perfect. And then after that step I'll go in with the details, so the tiny little hexagonal patterns on top of the nose. I'm using the silicone blending tool for the nose quite a lot, because again it gives that really nice smooth look. So just getting the tones down, blending it out, making it look nice and smooth, and then we're picking out some of the highlighted areas with a rubber pencil. And here you can see me adding in that kind of hexagonal texture with a really sharp 2B mechanical pencil. And then I went in with a jelly roll pen just to pick out some highlights on the sides of the shape. So we're really taking into account the direction of the light, and then we're picking out the highlights on that side of the shape, and then kind of making it a bit thinner with our pencil so it looks like it's really picking up the outside of those hexagonal patterns on the nose, and that can give a really realistic effect. As you can see there, I used the jelly roll pen to do those little whiskers and hairs overlapping the shadow on the tongue. Now we're onto the tongue, so we're just picking out the darkest areas we can see, but I'm building them up very gradually here. Don't want to go in too dark on this area because it's all quite blown out by the light, but we do just want the main kind of structure of the tongue and those tiny little wrinkles we see in the tongue, because they're quite characteristic of the dog that we're drawing. So I haven't completely finished the tongue here. I'm kind of moving on to the white section that will be underneath the tongue, because I know that's going to be overlapping it, so I don't really want to go to town on the details and then have to rub anything out. So I'm using a similar technique here that I did to the head. So I'm getting down the shadows first with like a 2H pencil, and then blending out with a cotton bud, so I've just got a nice light tone covering the paper, and then we've got a nice base to use the rubber pencil to rub out some flyaway hairs that look bright white. So you can see me there, I'm just adding in those hairs with the Faber Castell Perfection pencil. I know this is really fast, guys, but yeah, this is what I have to do on YouTube. So I'm using the silicone tool there again to kind of rub bits out, and sorry, not rub bits out, put bits down like clumps of shadow. It's a really good tool for getting down some fur direction if you don't want it to be too sharp. So using the triangle technique again here for the directional fur on the face and the muzzle here. I have got a full tutorial on noses. If you look back on my channel, I think it was the last video I did, or oh no, not the last video, maybe 2 videos back, I've got a full tutorial on noses if you would like to see that, and it's a lot slower than this. So just use the jelly roll pen there to pick out some little bubbles on the tongue and add some tiny little flecks of highlight, which is where there's little bits of saliva. And now we're onto the body. I wanted the body area to be a little bit more blurred out, as it's not the focal point of this portrait. So I'm just getting down some really dark tones there, and then I'm blending out the edges with the cotton bud. All the while being aware of the fur direction and just respecting it, to give it respect. So I'm leaving the highlighted bit out there on the body, and then I'll go in with a cotton bud and a blender to kind of blend the area out but make it not too dark, so that we've got that really nice effect that the sun is kind of bouncing off that area of fur. And we're coming towards the end now, guys. Here's the finished piece. I hope you really liked this video. As I said, the full 3-hour tutorial can be found on my Patreon channel, so check that out if you're interested, and then you can give this drawing a go using the line art and the reference photo. All the tools and materials used for today's drawing can be found in the description below. There's some links down there. If you want to see any more drawings, we've got some videos on noses, fur direction, coloured pencil drawings, all of that on my channel, so check it out. Give this video a like and a thumbs up. Give this video a thumbs up and a comment if you liked it. And yeah, can't wait to read your comments, guys. See you next video.